Years of preparation have led to a significant milestone for SpaceX, as the company recently attempted to ignite all 33 engines of its Super Heavy rocket booster in a test fire, marking the largest static fire test in its history. This enormous rocket booster is expected to be the most powerful launch vehicle ever constructed, and the test fire represents a crucial step towards that goal. It was observed that during the test, only 31 engines were firing instead of the expected 33. This has prompted SpaceX CEO Elon Musk to explain the reason behind this anomaly. In this video, we will discuss why SpaceX Booster 7 engines failed and why Elon Musk is furious. Subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon for the latest space news and updates. Musk has revealed that SpaceX's Super Heavy Booster 7, also known as B7, successfully ignited 31 of its 33 Raptor engines during a recent static fire test. One engine was manually disabled before the test, and another was found to be faulty and shut down during the ignition process. Nevertheless, the remaining 31 engines managed to fire for the full 5 seconds required for the test, with Musk stating that even with 2 engines down, they would still be sufficient for orbital missions. The rocket survived the test without incident, with no fires, explosions, or tank ruptures reported. The rocket's tanks were filled with 3,000 tons of liquid methane and oxygen propellant to partially counteract the thrust of the Raptor engines. The test also featured the use of 20 clamps that held Starship down to the launch mount. From SpaceX's perspective, the fact that its only orbital launch site and equipment survived the static fire is a success in itself, but there is much more to the test than just that. The debut Starship recently vaporized rocket records despite experiencing the loss of 2 Raptors. SpaceX, however, managed to break the all-time record for the number of rocket engines fired simultaneously. This particular record was formerly held by the Soviet N-1 rocket that had launched 4 times with 30 Nk-15 engines during the late 1960s and early 1970s, albeit none of its test flights yielded any success. Nevertheless, the N-1 still managed to establish a record for the most thrust generated by a single rocket, generating an incredible 4,500 tons or 99 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. Although neither SpaceX nor its CEO Elon Musk has confirmed it, the probability of the Super Heavy Booster 7 breaking the historic thrust record is notably high. Each Raptor 2 engine has the potential to generate up to 230 tons or 507,000 pound force of thrust at sea level. Remarkably, the Raptor is theoretically designed to scale back to as low as 40%, or 92 tons, which is approximately 200,000 pound force of thrust. Assuming that all 33 engines operate as intended at their minimum throttle setting, Super Heavy would have produced around 36 tons, equivalent to approximately 67 million pound force of thrust during the recent static fire. Despite this incredible feat, it still falls short of setting a record, yet keep in mind that this is only 40%. To break N-1's thrust record with 31 Raptors, the average throttle setting would need to be about 64 or higher, a feat that is far from unreasonable. From a data-gathering perspective, a complete thrust static fire would be the most valuable 33-engine test SpaceX could undertake. However, it would be the most challenging and stressful for both the rocket and pad. The former SpaceX executive, Tom Mueller, who is effectively the father of the Raptor engine, maintains that SpaceX broke a record once held by the Soviet N-1 rocket. It is highly likely that he still receives information straight from SpaceX engineers he previously worked with. Nonetheless, one would expect SpaceX to confirm this incredible feat with pride, assuming that a rocket it constructed became the most powerful in history. Even then, this static fire would represent the most powerful rocket test in history, regardless of whether or not Starship becomes the most powerful rocket ever. One thing is for sure, Starship has become the most potent rocket ever tested on the ground. However, the first stage of Saturn V is a prominent contender for that title. With its initial sea-level static fire in 1965, the first stage was able to produce an astonishing 3,400 tons, or 7.5 million pound force of thrust. However, this gargantuan force likely contributed to the stage's failure. Meanwhile, the once booster was never static fired. Other notable rockets, such as the Space Shuttle and the SLS, rely on a combination of solid rocket boosters and liquid engines. The inherent challenge of testing these different types of engines together on the ground is a major obstacle to be conquered. However, SpaceX's Starship has recently achieved a groundbreaking static fire test, which represents a new milestone in rocketry. The impressive 31 Raptor static fire is likely to surpass Saturn V's record and become the most potent ground test in rocketry history. Now that the test has been concluded, the focus shifts to the aftermath and the next steps that SpaceX must take. While the engines that did ignite in the historic Starship static fire appeared to perform well, the absence of two engines has possibly complicated the company's course of action. To gain full confidence in Starship's capabilities and ensure its safe launch and flight, a full 33-engine test is likely required. The Federal Aviation Administration must also grant approval for Starship to take off, which may prove challenging as they could deny SpaceX a license without a perfect 33-engine static fire. On the other hand, the FAA may accept that Starship is safe to launch and reach orbit even with several missing Raptors. SpaceX could alternatively guarantee that it will only permit Starship to lift off if all 33 engines are active. This approach may do away with the need for a second 33-engine static fire attempt. SpaceX has been tirelessly readying Booster 7 and a Starship prototype known as Ship 24 for an orbital flight trial, with an intense focus on preparatory measures. Among these measures, the duo underwent a fueling test on January 23 and then underwent a series of static fires. In September of last year, Ship 24 fired up all 6 of its Raptors at Starbase, while Booster 7's 14 of its 33 engines ignited 2 months later. That was the peak of the big first stage's static fire exploits until this most recent test. While the Booster 7 test did result in some pad damage, the company may still be satisfied with the results and move on to focusing on finishing Starship 24, which will then be transported back to the pad and reinstalled on top of Booster 7. But don't get too excited just yet. While SpaceX CEO Elon Musk and COO President Gwynne Shotwell agreed that Starship's orbital launch debut could happen as early as March 2023, the first launch is really just a test flight. According to Shotwell, the real goal is to not blow up the launch pad. After all, the company has invested more than $1 billion in a massive launch and catch tower, as well as ground systems to support fueling of the massive vehicles. With so many assets clustered in a small area near the Gulf of Mexico, SpaceX is understandably cautious about the risk of destroying the infrastructure it has spent over a year building and testing. And even if everything goes smoothly during the first test flight, it will likely be months before another launch attempt can be made if the area is destroyed. Additionally, there are regulatory concerns that were raised as part of the FAA process to clear the South Texas location for experimental orbital launches. So while the recent static fire test was certainly an impressive feat, there's still a long road ahead for SpaceX as it works towards its goal of launching Starship into orbit. But with the company's track record of innovation and determination, it's clear that they're up for the challenge. That ends today's video. Please share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Thank you for watching.